at something that's very, even Friends, okay, which you can consider kind of like a primetime sitcom. That's a show that slowly introduced the idea that these characters do change and go through relationships. And when they're done with that relationship, they're at the other end. It's not like everything is normal. You know, so it's a slower change in television because we're dealing a lot of times with the networks and a lot of times with the traditional audiences for television. But now that we have so many different outlets for material, that those things are changing quite rapidly, actually. I hope that answers that. What else, guys? Questions about movies, questions about shows. Yeah. Go ahead, Amy.
Based on what you just said, I remember one
yeah. Excellent show.
Excellent. She changed a lot.
Yes.
And then she kind of...
That's right. It also depends on the quality of the writing, which sometimes in shows is uneven, guys. Remember, because the writer's room in a show may change throughout the seasons of it, which makes it more difficult. A lot of the times the creators will go through a few of the first seasons and then be discouraged by the way that the network or whoever it is that producing the show doesn't want to change the characters anymore because they feel like the audience wants to see the same thing over and over again. You know, it's a bit of a battle. I think, you know, everything in television and in film is a battle between the art form of telling stories and the business of television and film. And we have to remember that it is a business, that we have to take the audience into account, and that, you know, the ultimate power to change things is in the audience. If the audience continues to watch the same stuff and is satisfied with the same type of material, then the networks and the HBOs and Netflix, they're going to continue to make the same thing. I mean, it's inevitable, guys. They want to make money just like anybody else, right? They're running a business. So when you're an artist and you're coming into an opportunity to work with a network, hopefully you're trying to make the most artistic show that you can make or the most artistic movie that you can make and still try and find a big enough audience so that it is successful and you can make something else after it. Some of the most successful filmmakers in history have been genre filmmakers. And they're still right now considered some of the, at the top of the pantheon of great filmmakers. Take somebody like Hitchcock. Hitchcock made over 60 films, 65 I think. Right? And most of them were very successful films for his time. You know, and still we go back and we study the way he did it, right? Because he was a guy that understood this is art, but at the same time, I need to find an audience. You know, I wanna like you know, make money out of this and be able to finance my next project. You got a question? Here comes the mic.
Appreciate it. What was your all-time favorite movie and or TV series and why?
Okay, that's a great question. A question that I get asked a lot by my students, what's my favorite movie? Almost an impossible question to answer because I would have to give you a list of about 10. But I'm going to tell you what my favorite movie of all time is. It's a movie called The Seven Samurai. It's a movie made by a Japanese director called Akira Kurosawa. Okay? The Seven Samurai has been remade like 8 times, including twice in 2 westerns called The Magnificent Seven. Right? It's the same story, right? 7 guys are hired to protect the village, right, from bandits, and they go in and half of them die. The reason why I like it is because, first of all, I am a genre writer and a genre director. That means that I like working within the confines of a genre. I find it very creative. And my genre of choice is thrillers, and that's the thriller. Okay? And to me, they are the movies that, you know, move me the most. They have very dramatic scenes, but they also have action in them. And I love going to the movies to watch a good action movie. You know, when I get involved with the protagonist, I love it. You know, it's just one of my favorite things of all time. Now, in television shows, I'll tell you that that's a tough one too, but I really think that Breaking Bad is a magnificent show. It's an incredible show that took you through, I think it's how many seasons? 7, 8, whatever, however many it was, and they're all good. And the performances are incredible. And really takes the character on an incredible journey from point A to point B to point C. You can't really do wrong with something like that. Again, shows like The Sopranos were great. Shows, I mean, I thought Game of Thrones was great until the last season. You know, there's a lot of stuff that's coming out now that's still on. That's great. But to me, that would be the answer. My favorite of all time. Back there, yes.
It would seem that a lot of the structure has to do with like action. What is your advice for work that is more dialogue heavy, or something like? So, what is your advice for work that's more like dialogue heavy? I think it's called like mumblecore. Like,
very good.
So, how do you still hit those the structure of a story and keep people engaged with heavy dialogue?
Very good, very good. Well, one of my favorite writers is Aaron Sorkin. I don't think anybody writes more dialogue-heavy scenes than Aaron Sorkin. The beginning of the network of Social Network, I don't know if you guys realize, it was a 10-page scene. That is, in terms of filmmaking, death. It's like you're putting a gun to your head and pulling the trigger, right? It's very difficult to make work. So let's talk a little bit about that. So look, films are a visual medium. That means that you're telling stories with pictures, and there's a language that goes with it. And I'll give you a little example of that in a second, okay? You need to be very aware of that when you're making movies. It's not like you can sit two people in two chairs and have them talk and have the camera go back and forth and then just cut it together and show it to people. That's not going to cut it, okay? You're not going to keep the audience entertained, okay? Most scenes in movies, the average scene is 2 pages long. Okay? 2 pages. Even heavily dramatic scenes sometimes are just 3 pages. And the reason for that is this. If your scene is longer than 2 pages, the editor is going to have to repeat shots. And the moment you start repeating shots, you lose the audience a little bit. Okay? The audience can drink up whatever is visually appealing about a shot in seconds. So you show it to them again, it's like, okay, I'm seeing it again, so now the curiosity of looking at that shot is lost. So if your scene, there's a lot to be said in your scene. Let's say you have a scene that's 5 pages long. You need to keep the visual storytelling agile. You need to keep it moving forward. So I'll give you a very easy way to do that, or not easy, but one of the most basic ways, right? Look, whenever there's a scene between 2 people, there's a line in between those 2 people. Many filmmakers call this the 180-degree line, right? Those of you who are filmmakers, you're familiar with the 180-degree line. I call it the axis of action. Okay? As the scene gets to the most dramatic part of the content, the camera needs to get closer and closer to the axis of action and closer to the subject. The closer it gets to the axis of action and the closer it gets to the subject, the more dramatic the shot is. So in visual language, in cinema language, you're telling the audience, wait a minute, here comes the important part. Boom, close up. Okay? The closer we get to the axis of action, the more of the human face that you see. And the human face is always going to be the most interesting thing you'll ever shoot. Okay? So, when the scene is long, you want the visual language to be active. When the scene is short, the visual language can take a little bit of a rest, right? Because we're moving forward. Okay? Now, when my students come to me with very long scenes, I always say to them, look at the scene again and see how you can make it shorter. See how you can make it visual. Again, because movies are a visual medium. And it just works best when I'm looking at something and I'm understanding what happens. So look, I'll give you an example of that. There's, are you familiar with the work of Ingmar Bergman, the Swedish director? Very famous director. I would highly recommend you guys. Old movies, so they're going to be slow at different pace, but fantastic filmmaking. Okay. So one of his movies, there's a woman that's in a restaurant in a hotel, and it's a seduction scene. She's seducing the waiter. Okay. So how to write that scene. Is there a lot of dialogue? Is there so this is how Bergman did it. The waiter comes over, she drops the napkin to the floor on purpose, maybe by mistake. He goes down and grabs the napkin, and as he comes up, he smells her. He smells her legs, he smells her body, he looks at her face, they look at each other, cut to bedroom. That's a movie scene. Okay? Much better than any dialogue they could have had at that point. But again, if you have dialogue, and sometimes you do need a lot of dialogue, that's part of the storytelling format, keep the filmmaking agile. Change your shot. If possible, change location. Travel the scene. Right? Let's say that you're writing a scene between husband and wife, they're breaking up, they're having a fight. You can write that scene for the whole scene to happen in the bedroom, but why? Make it bedroom, kitchen, car, street. Now the same scene, that's 4 pages, you have 4 different locations. Right? It's visually interesting, and you're matching what's happening dramatically with the dialogue with the visual content and the language of the film. Okay? Yes.
What did you think about the monologue in Ghost Story? Talking about a lot of dialogue type of scene. What did you think about first the eating of the pie in Ghost Story and the monologue in Ghost Story? I think it was very interesting. They shot that in one shot. It was a long scene. What are your comments on that?
I mean, look, sometimes I may shoot a long monologue on a long shot and try to keep the camera from cutting. I'm working against, as a filmmaker, having been doing this for 25 years, I have a sense in me where my storytelling timing wants me to be ahead of the audience. I want to show you what you want to see before you want to see it, right? I want to be just one step ahead of you in the cut. Now, sometimes you may do a long shot like that where the character is talking for a long time. One, you need a hell of an actor. Yes. You need an actor that can carry that moment. You need a hell of a writer that can write you a monologue that's interesting enough for somebody to talk for 5, 6, 10 minutes, however long that shot may be. So whenever you let go of one thing, you got to make sure that you substitute with something else. Because if not, it's like you're taking a wheel, you're taking a piece out of it. It's going to be like, blunt, blunt. It's not going to flow. So, there's no easy answer for it. But that's.
Did you like the scene? I think they did a great job.
I think they did a great job. And there's many instances in which you have monologues when you have a good actor and good writing, and they're able to hold it. But it goes against a lot of the principles of filmmaking. But sometimes some of the best people do that. Here's another thing. Look, we've been talking about 3-act structure, and a lot of my students want to write not 3-act structure, right? They want to be different. They want to write independent movies that are different from Hollywood movies and genres. That's fantastic, and I encourage that in my students, their own expression. But the thing is that you have to understand is this: whenever you deviate from the form, you're gambling. You're gambling. You're trying something different, and you don't know if it's going to work. Sometimes it works wonderfully. Take a Fellini film like 8 1/2. Fantastic. Completely anti-plotted, completely out of this world. Take something like Pulp Fiction, right? Not told with a beginning, a middle, and end, but the scenes are scrambled. And sometimes it works really well. But other times you get stuff like Tree of Life, and you can't sit through it. When you're sitting there, you're going like, why am I watching this, and why are you wasting my time? And And that's terrible when that happens, right? The biggest mistake and the biggest sin that a filmmaker can make is to bore the audience. You do not get to do that, guys. Right? You cannot bore the audience. You must keep moving forward. You must entertain. Right? You must entertain. Yes.
Sorry, another question.
Yeah.
You were talking about like sympathy or empathy for a character like Hannibal Lecter. In more recent days, there's been some movies that get backlash for redeeming irredeemable characters. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on if that's changed in today's culture.
So, I love irredeemable characters. That's my answer to that. Look, as an artist, this is my belief, guys, right? Everybody has their own way of doing things, but I'll tell you what I believe. It is your job to do as Shakespeare did. Put the mirror up to life. Okay? The character makes you uncomfortable? Good. It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. Right? I am showing you what is possible in human beings. And human beings can do some pretty crazy stuff. Right? So as an artist, it's not your job to judge the character. That's for the audience. That's not your job. Your job is to make that character as close to human as possible. And to love that character. Right? Thomas Harris, who wrote the novels for Silence of the Lambs, and Ted Talley, who wrote the screenplay of Silence of the Lambs, loved Hannibal Lecter. That's why they made him what they made him. And what that does is show you what human beings are capable of doing. And that's an incredible thing for the audience to see, to understand, because they're human too. Right? And you sit there and you go like, wow, look at what we're capable of doing. Horrible sometimes and sometimes wonderful. Right? And it's my job as a filmmaker to show you all of it. And not to comment on a character. I remember back in New York, I started out as an actor. And I was fortunate enough to take some classes with Stella Adler. Stella Adler is a great teacher of acting in New York. She trained Marlon Brando, she trained Robert De Niro, and Harvey Keitel. I mean, she produced some incredible actors. And I was fortunate enough to be in the room with her a few times. And one of the things she said is, look, an actor must never comment on a character. And what she meant is this. When an actor plays a part, but it's kind of tongue-in-cheek. They're telling you, oh, but I would never do anything like that. That makes the performance superficial. It doesn't give me the enjoyment of watching that person do what they do. So what if they do is terrible? Well, guess what? People do terrible things. And your job is to play that part. To play that part and justify it just like anybody would justify doing it. Remember that bad people in movies don't think they're bad people. Right? They're dealing with whatever life gave them, and they're dealing with it the best way they can. Okay? So to me, that's just my personal opinion in terms of storytelling and filmmaking. You portray it as true to life as you can. And if you get to play a character that's racist, a character that's, you play it truthfully to show people, look what we're capable of doing. And hopefully to learn from that. Right? Again, not to judge it. You can judge it. Once you become an audience member, you can say, oh, that was terrible, that person. But the satisfaction comes out of watching that actor play it, man, just perfect. I mean, to watch Anthony Hopkins do that, you know, it's a pleasure to watch him do it. There's a Russian writer by the name of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and he has an incredible quote from his book, The Gulag Archipelago. And the quote goes like this: evil is not a line that crosses between states or between political parties. Evil is a line that crosses every human heart. And that is a fantastic analysis of the human condition. Okay? That means that we're all capable of doing terrible things. And the only thing that keeps us from doing them is seeing it done. Okay? And part of art is to make us see things that we sometimes don't want to see. Yes?
So what do you think about censorship in scripts?
What do I think about censorship?
In scripts, like censoring certain attitudes, certain behaviors. Do you think that's like...
I think that censorship is terrible.
Yeah.
That's what I think. I think that artists should be allowed to express themselves, whatever ideas they have. And if I disagree with those ideas, then I disagree with those ideas. Okay? But remember also that just because you write... Okay, look, let me put it this way. Nabokov, when he wrote Lolita, he wasn't saying people should be pedophiles. That's not what he's saying. Okay? He's showing you a pedophile, making him human, because guess what? Pedophiles are human. Does it make you uncomfortable? Yes, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. Right? To Kill a Mockingbird, does it make you uncomfortable? Yes, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. That's the whole point of the book. Okay? So if we try to whitewash everything so that everything is copacetic, so that nobody's offended, then what are we doing art for? It's just what it is, man. If somebody's not upset at you, you're not doing your job right. Your art is going to upset some people, and that's okay. That's what art is meant to do. It's meant to educate, it's meant to entertain, it's meant to make people upset. So I say, write what you have to say. Just do it.
Keep it real.
Keep it real. You know, and if the ideas strike you as controversial, then go with it. That's what you got. You know, it's a mistake to think that you can write something other than what's in your heart. Okay? Your art chooses you. You don't choose it. You don't go to say, oh, I want to make movies like Judd Apatow. I just want to make, you know, there's something about Mary. That's what I want to write. Well, if it's not in you, you're not going to write that. Or you're going to try and it's going to be mediocre. And that's the truth. You have to truly write what you like to see. And again, going back to my students and some of the things that they do is, a lot of the times film students, they'll make a movie to please the other students in the class. Right? Because they feel it's intellectual, they feel whatever. It's like, look, you gotta make the movies you like to watch. If you like to watch Finding Nemo, then go ahead and go and write Finding Nemo. That's a fantastic movie. Yes, A Hero's Journey. Why not? If what you like to write is Moonlight, then go with God and write Moonlight. That's what you like. That's what you like to watch. So, what do I think about censorship? It sucks. Get it out of here. Yeah.
Can you please repeat the evil, because that was really good.
Yeah, so it's from Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and the book is Gulag Archipelago, and the quote goes like this: evil is not a line that crosses in between states or in between political parties. Evil is a line that crosses every human heart. It's an extremely deep statement, which tells you, look, you may put yourself above all sorts of things, but the truth is that evil. You are capable of doing terrible things. You are capable of it. You're human, and everybody that's done something terrible in this world has been human too. And it's part of our understanding that helps us to elevate ourselves above that. You're welcome. Yes.
Kind of on that same vein with like the censorship, is there any hope ever for a good comedy again? Because they're not funny anymore.
We're living in trying times, my friend.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad Mel Brooks existed when he did.
Yeah. Look, we're living in trying times, and we've become a culture of getting offended by things. And the truth is that good comedy sometimes is offensive. You know, good comedy comes out of anger a lot of the times. Because the comedian, what they do, and I mean, I always wish my whole life that I could write good comedy. That's not where I incline. I tend to go towards dark thrillers. That's my thing. But, you know, good comedy writers, man, they find something that they can't stand and they just go on the attack. And they attack it in as many ways as they can do it. You know, and the good comedy writers, the real good ones, they turn that power of reflection onto themselves. So not only make fun of others outside, but they go like this, and then they're making fun of their own idiosyncrasies and their own cultures. And look, you know, laugh. Have a good laugh. That's the whole point of it. Have a good laugh. You know, so is good comedy going to come back? Absolutely. I think we go in cycles, okay? And there's always going to be good work out there, and sometimes it's going to be less popular, other times it's going to be more popular. But just like we're tilting in one direction, eventually we're going to start tilting in the other direction. That's just inevitable. You know, the wheel's going to turn around and happen. I think that there are some things about the times that we're writing in now and that we're producing work on now that are very challenging. But there are also great things about it. The exposure of voices that didn't have, you know, the opportunity to express themselves. I'm Puerto Rican, born and raised in the island. Most of my students, I would say 80% of my students are Latinos. And I say to them, there's no better time for you to be in this industry. Now is the time for you to express your ideas, no matter what. Just go say what you have to say. Oh, you're offending other Latinos? Well, go for it. I mean, go and offend. You know, people are getting mad at you? Yeah, well, it's okay. Let them get mad. Let them get mad. You make the movies you want to make. You know, and that will sort itself out, I suppose.
We have time for one more question.
One more.
That's a lot of pressure. Yeah, so I had a question 2 questions ago about something that you said, and then now we've gotten kind of off.
That's okay, we'll go back.
Yeah, so
we'll run it back.
All right, so I like the idea that you talked about of writing your experience, writing what you feel, and all that, and also crossing lines into, you know, societal lines, right? Like hard truths or dark fantasies or whatever. So what's your thoughts, I guess, on the opposite side of that entertainment is supposed to be escapist? You know what I mean? Like, we're supposed to travel to a distant land of not what we see every day or not what our real experience is. You know, and where does that, like, how do you feel? And so I think my question was, how do you fill in the gaps of, I can tell a story of, you know, young black dude from wherever about, right? Because that's personal experience. But like, how do you fill in the gaps in your writing of escapist things where you're talking about a fanciful situation that nobody's seen and nobody's experienced? Are you now having to make it part real, or can you know, how do you fill in those gaps?
So, excellent question. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between real and truth. Two different things. Okay? A movie doesn't need to have anything real in it, but it needs to have truth. Okay? A movie is a lie that tells the truth. You understand? Now, stories, they're not life. Stories are metaphors for life. For life, I have life. Okay? But the 2 hours in the movie theater, or the hour that you spend watching Netflix or whatever it is, you don't want life.